whatever path you were on, whatever inspired you to come here today, we honor you and we welcome you. And now, our message.
This is an invitation for us to be still. To be still and know. And to call forward our higher self. So just take a breath with me and know. Be still and know. Know yourself. Know the presence of Spirit of God, of universal oneness. Right here, right now. We have made this quiet place in our hearts and in our minds. May we know the peace and joy and love that it brings. To know we are in the right place at the right time. To know that we are one with God. To know that we are enough. That we are loved. That we are loving. Be open. Be willing. Be love. And so it is. We'd like to invite Reverend Hallie up.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, gosh, we are, if you're here for the first time, welcome. And if you're back, welcome back. We have had an amazing weekend. Some of you came up to the valley to Beth's home for a talk given by Nithya Shanti this Friday. Who was there at the talk on Friday? Quite a few of you. It was. Did you enjoy yourself? Yes. Was it wonderful? Yes. How wonderful! And then there was about 25 of us that got together for a deep dive into living from the heart, an all-day meditation workshop yesterday. And so we're still flying high from that amazing energy. Not only flying high, but we're deeply grounded in a sense of who and what we really are. So thank you, Nithya, for sharing that with us. So I'm really excited. Some of you are going, who's Nithya? What's a Nithya? And you're about to find out. Last September, Corey Jane, over there with the hat on, came up to me and said, oh, there's this amazing guy up in Logan. He's just this amazing spiritual teacher. Maybe we could bring him here to the Satya Center. So I outreached to Nithya and he came and he did our Kickstarter for Ageless Wisdom Speaks, a series of talks that we're developing and we're planning on having over the rest of our human existence. And so he did our Kickstarter back in September, and there was about 75 of us, and we met at the Universalist Church just up the street. And then we had a potluck, and I thought, well, we can do this again. So we did that on Friday night. We had our second Ageless Wisdom Speaks, and Nithya came, and it was amazing. So I would like to share a few thoughts about Nithya and what he brought alive in us yesterday, and what I see him doing around the world. We're really lucky to have him living here at the top of Utah about 3 months out of the year. The rest of the year he's either in his home India or he's traveling around the world teaching universal spiritual principles and practices to help us wake up to our true being, to help us reveal or remember who we really are. So, without much more talking on my part, I'll let you get a feel for who and what Nithya is. So, Nithya Shanti.
joy to be here with all of you this morning. Good morning. Namaste. There's an American teacher, and she had an awakening, and people began coming to her door, and they would say namaste, and she never heard the word namaste. So she heard it as no mistake. No mistake. So wise. I mean, they're coming saying no mistake, but there is no mistake. The nice translation of namaste. So it's lovely to be here with all of you. And before you came, I was here about an hour before you all came. I was just present here in this beautiful space. And I went to the back of the room, and there's a glass door, and I was looking out, and there's a beautiful purple bush just shining in the sun. And there was a ray of sunlight coming exactly to where I was. And I had this thought that this is the most perfect moment of my life. And it came like a friend that I've had many times. You see, you meet old friends sometimes, and when you meet them again, you feel so good. So this is a thought that I have, in a way, cultivated. It's a very beautiful thought. This is the most perfect moment of my life. And if you start thinking like this, you'll start finding many such perfect moments of your life. What's a perfect moment? You're fully present. And there's no sense of something's missing. There should be more of something or less of something. You're just fully present. So, if there's a cake, if for every moment of your life you have a cake. Yeah, there you are. For every moment of your life you have a cake. And you're going to cut this cake in two parts. So one part is called discontentment, and one part is called contentment, or you could say gratitude. Now, the unhappy moments of your life would be where the discontentment part of the cake is really big, and the contentment or gratitude part of the cake is really small. Is it right? Yeah. So the discontentment is really big, and the contentment is really small. It's called an unhappy moment of your life. And a happy moment of your life is when the contentment or the gratitude piece is really big, and the discontentment is really, really small. Right? A nervous breakdown would be where it's completely discontented. And bliss would be where it's completely contentment and connection and presence. Right? Now the beautiful question, the powerful question is, who's cutting the cake? Who's cutting the cake? Right? So I remember this joke of this little kid who went to a birthday party. It was a very rich kid's birthday party. So he comes home and says, Mom, it was an amazing birthday party. They had 5 birthday cakes. Really? They had 5 birthday cakes? What kind of cake? So there was pineapple cake and vanilla cake and chocolate cake and name 2 more, right? There were 5 birthday cakes. So which one did you have? I had a little of the first cake, a little of the second cake, a little of the third cake, 4th cake, 5th cake, and then what? And now I have a stomach ache. So to see every moment as just complete. Whenever you do that, it's a perfect moment. So I see myself, in fact, my work, as Ali was sharing, my work is essentially just 2 things. I invite people to connect with this moment, to come back to the reality of being here now, letting the clouds of thoughts and distractions pass a little bit, see things the way they are. So inviting people back to the present. And the second part of my work is telling stories. And I found that the quality of our life is just these 2 things. The quality of our life is how present we are, and the quality of our life is the quality of the stories that we are telling. So when we are telling poor quality stories, we have a poor quality experience. When we are telling high quality stories, we have a high quality experience. And wisdom is realizing that it's all just stories. It's all stories. Your whole life is one big story. And how are you going to tell that story? So I would love for all of us to be masterful storytellers. And even what seems like a terrible thing from someone's perspective, from your perspective, it's a beautiful thing. You become a powerful storyteller. Mahatma Gandhi, who was a famous person in India, he actually spent many years in prison. Because that's what, and he would purposely disobey some of the orders of the British, civil disobedience, and he would go to prison for that. And he would not waste his time in prison. In prison also, he would be writing, and he'd be meditating, and he'd be contemplating. In fact, today in all the Indian prisons where Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned, that part of the prison is kept like a sanctuary. It's kept like a place of peace. Because he would make that prison atmosphere, that was something that would ennoble him. There was a film made on Mahatma Gandhi several years back, and the actor in the film was Ben Kingsley. And Ben Kingsley, because the new generation of people like me who were born after Mahatma Gandhi. We've seen that film telecast so many times. The national television network would telecast that film every year. That we actually, when we think of Gandhi, we think of Ben Kingsley. We often think of Ben Kingsley. And I read an interview with Ben Kingsley as to how he did that role. So he was actually very nervous to do this very important role of Mahatma Gandhi. So what he did was, for weeks before they actually began shooting, in his hotel room, he filled up his hotel room with pictures of Mahatma Gandhi. And he kept on thinking of himself as though Mahatma Gandhi is blessing him and that he himself has become like Gandhi. And if you see that film, it really shines through. I really invite you to see that film. I think it's David Attenborough or Richard Attenborough, one of those two. It's a film by one of them. And it's a powerful film where he's telling the story of this man who devoted his life to truth. So, when you think of such people, the moment you think of their name, some quality shines out. You think of Mahatma Gandhi, truth or non-violence shines out. Think of Mother Teresa, immediately compassion shines out. Because they oriented their whole life story around some principle, some powerful center which gave meaning to the rest of their life. So as we think of our life, we can come back to something central and ask ourselves, what's most important? And what's interesting is sometimes we don't see it, other people see it better than us. So I came across a principle called the Pareto principle. And the Pareto principle, some of you may have heard of this, it's called the 80-20 principle. And there was an economist in Italy who found that 80% of the wealth was held by 20% of the people. And this seems to be true even today. And so it came down to, so most of things in life can be looked at, 20% of what you do gives you 80% of your results. So I asked the people in my life, tell me, what is my 20% that gives 80% of the results? And they came back to me and said, Nithya, what we see in you is that you share profound things in light-hearted ways. So I think this is something worth for all of us to do, to introspect and ask ourselves, what's really important? What's the center which informs the rest of my life? How can I tell high-quality stories? And as you tell high-quality stories and live in the present moment, every day becomes a beautiful day of your life. So today, this is what I want to do. I want to share some stories with all of you. Is that a good idea?
Yes!
So, one of the stories is one of my teachers. His name is Ajahn Brahm, and he's a Buddhist monk. And he grew up in England and went to Thailand to ordain as a monk. And he spent about 8 years training in Thailand in the forest tradition. And then his teacher invited him to, in fact not invited him, told him to go to Australia and set up a new center there. Because people had donated some land and they wanted monks to come. So he was actually very reluctant, he didn't really want to go. But because his teacher asked him, he went. He went to Australia. And they were given the land, but nothing much more than that. He actually said the first night, they had these doors. And they put the doors on the ground with 4 bricks, and that was their bed. And they literally began from scratch, so that's really nothing over there. And that's how they began, that center. So they began from that place. And he had studied in, I think, Oxford or Cambridge, so he had never really done the work of, like, the work with the hands, right, in that way. But there he had to do that. Because, like, you know, like in countries like US and Australia, it's very expensive to have people come and create things for you. So the monks themselves had to learn to lay bricks. So he had to learn to lay bricks. And he decided he'd make it a meditation. He's going to bring his whole spirit into it and make it into a meditation. So he spent 4 days making this wall. And every brick he laid very meditatively, very carefully. And he made this wall. And he stood back to admire his wall. And then everything fell apart for him. Because he noticed 2 bad bricks. Because he noticed 2 bricks were coming out and going back. And it was spoiling the perfection of that wall. And he got very dissatisfied. He went to his teacher and said, I want to break down the wall and start again. So what happened? So there are 2 bad bricks. So alright, we can manage with 2 bad bricks. Let's continue. We have other things to do. But he wasn't satisfied. He really wanted to change it. But his teacher wouldn't give him permission. So when people would come to visit the monastery, often it was his duty to show them around. He'd make sure he'd never go close to that wall. Because, you know, whenever he'd go to that wall, he'd have a contracting feeling and he'd feel, this represents my life. I can never do anything properly. There I go, I can't even make a wall properly. How can I ever get enlightened? How can I ever have that kind of perfection? So he would always feel disheartened. One day he was walking past the wall and the person with him spontaneously said, that's a great wall. Did you make it? He was very surprised. He said, sir, are you missing your glasses? Can't you notice the 2 bad bricks? And what the man said next, Ajahn Brahm said, it changed his life. The man said, I can see the 2 bad bricks, but I can also see the 998 good bricks. And it struck him all that time. He's not a professional bricklayer. And he was totally obsessed with those 2 bad bricks. He wasn't looking at the rest of the wall. He hadn't noticed all the other bricks he put perfectly right. And then he realized truly this is the story of his life. Because that's what he's done his whole life. He's always looked at the 2 things that are not quite right. Despite being a monk, despite meditating, always fault finding, always think, but that's not quite right, but that's not quite right. And it created a revolution in his consciousness. And he realized that 99.8% of that wall was perfect. 0.2% was a little bit off, not even broken, just a little bit off. But in his mind, he just completely blown that up. So he decided from that point onwards, he's going to focus on the good bricks and not going to focus on the bad bricks. So this is what happened. As we start focusing on what's good in our life, what our strengths are, what our gifts are, the strengths and gifts of other people, then we start creating a sense of connection. And we come out of the habit of always fault finding and seeing what's wrong. Last week, I was attending in Logan also, we have a Sangha that meets on Monday evenings. And a facilitator called Dan shared a very powerful story. I want to share the story with you. This is a true story of a young man who grew up in poverty, lived on the streets, and ended up joining a gang. And one of the rituals of this gang, one of the ways to enter the gang, they sometimes ask you to do terrible things. And he was given the assignment to go and randomly kill someone. And he didn't care, so he was given a gun, and he just went and shot a teenager. And a little while later, he was caught. And in his trial, the mother of that teenager just sat quietly, didn't say a word. The entire trial went through, and he was convicted, but he was underage, so he was only given a few years before that, and he was sent to a... And so as he's being convicted, the mother stood up, and she looked at him in his eyes, and she said, "I'm going to kill you." That's what she said. And he went to prison. Now, a few years passed, and this mother decided to visit him. She came to the prison. And they had a conversation, brief conversation, and she left. A few months later again she visited. And little by little they began having a conversation, a connection in the prison. And she would sometimes bring him a little bit of some little cake to eat. Or she would check if he needs something. She'd leave some money for him to buy a cigarette or something. And as his time for he was going to be released was coming, she asked him, "So what's your intention? What do you plan to do after you leave?" He says, "I don't know, I'm confused. I don't know what to do." She said, "All right, I have a friend and he owns a factory and perhaps I can get you a job there." She spoke to his parole officer and he said, "Yeah, that's possible." And then next time she met him, so all right, so you've got that job, where do you plan to stay? He says, "I don't know, I don't have a place to stay." She says, "You know what, I've got a spare bedroom in my house. Come and stay until you get settled, you come and stay with me." So when he comes out of prison, he comes and stays in her house, in that spare bedroom. He goes to work in a place where she set him up. He eats the food that's there in her house. And one day, she calls him aside and says, "Come and sit with me." And as they're sitting there, she looks at him quietly for a long time. Said, "Do you remember the day that you were convicted? What I said to you?" He said, "Ma'am, I can never forget that. I'm going to kill you." Right? She said, "And I've done that. I said I'm going to kill the boy who killed my boy. And I've done that. Today you're a different person." And then she said, "I have a request. My son is no longer with us, and I have a spare bedroom. Would you like to continue staying? I'd like to adopt you." And it's a true story, right? So again, instead of looking at the 2 bad bricks, the 2 bad bricks, the 2 bad bricks, she focused on what nobody else had seen in that boy. And what we focus on expands. So in ourselves and in others, to see the best in each other, and we bring out the best in each other. This is a very important quality. So when I lived as a monk for some time, and I'd been a monk for about 5 years, when a friend of mine in India invited me to come and teach. Now, in Buddhist tradition, you don't normally teach unless you've been a monk for at least 10 years. So I was quite clear that I wouldn't be able to take that, I wouldn't be able to teach. But that night when I was meditating, in fact next morning when I was meditating, I had what I can only call a download. It was like a download. And I knew that I was supposed to teach, and I knew exactly what I was supposed to teach. And it came like, do you know what a zip file is? Like a zip file. It came like a zip file, it came in a moment, but it took me the next few days to unpack it. There was so much of depth in that. And I asked my teacher, "Is it possible? I've been invited to teach, is it possible?" He said, "Yes, there are very few monks in India now, because now Buddhism doesn't really exist in India so much anymore. So yes, you can teach. And so I decided to go ahead. So first of all, I want to share what was that download. Just 3 things which came in that download. Deep listening, deep love, and deep silence. These are just the 3 words that came. Deep listening, deep love, and deep silence. And if I look at my work today, it's still about those things. Deep silence is about being present. It's about being here now, fully here now. When you're fully here now, you're so fully here now, there is no room for any chatter. There's no room for any distraction. It's a moment of perfection. That's called deep silence. And from that deep silence emerges the intention that may all be happy. May I be happy, may you be happy, may all of us be happy. That's called deep love. And from that you can truly listen to other people, not just to their words, but to their being. You can probably listen to them better than they can listen to themselves. You hear in what they're saying more than even they realize sometimes. Deep love and deep listening and deep connection. And as I contemplated this, I saw so many beautiful connections. For example, to love silence is meditation. To listen to silence is intuition. There was one more connection, I can't remember. And so when you act from silence, when you're living from silence, when you're loving silence, it's meditation. When you're listening to silence, it's intuition. And as you're living from silence, every moment of your life is filled with perfection. So this is what I've been sharing for the last several years. This is just what I've been sharing. I also use different words. So deep silence is attention. Being attentive to this moment and the beauty of this moment. Deep silence. Deep love is a sense of inwardly having good wishes for all. And it makes a difference. You know, there's one of my teachers, he travels quite a lot. And he often is on, in transit, so we often have to wait for several hours. His habit is, when he's sitting there in transit, he just radiates loving wishes to everybody in the airport.
Oh, man.
He just sits there at the airport, and there's nothing else to do, so he's just radiating loving wishes. Everybody who's going there, they all be happy, may all these beings be happy. One day, he said, a mother was walking with a little girl, maybe about 5 years old. And as they're walking, the little girl is captivated and looking at him, and she leaves her mother's arms, comes running, and jumps on his lap. And the mother is shocked, and he's shocked. And the mother is saying, what are you doing? Don't trouble him. And she's saying, no, I'm feeling comfortable here. She says, wow, nobody else in the airport picked it up, but this little girl picked it up.
Yeah.
Right? So the intentions we have in our heart, and you may notice those of you who have animals pick it up. They're very sensitive to your inner state of being. As a monk, I was once walking with other monks. We were walking for 5 days. It's called charika. You walk from one place to the next. And what's beautiful is you live on faith. You have no clue who's going to feed you. You have no clue who's going to give you a place to rest. We came to a monastery where this monk had adopted a deer. What happened was his mother had died, and as a young fawn, he had adopted the deer. The deer was not part of the monastery. So the moment we came, the deer walked up to us and sniffed us and let us pet him. We never really pet a deer before. And later that evening, he allowed us to stay. Later that evening, he said, do you know why I allowed you to stay? We said, why? What is it? Because this deer is very sensitive. Anyone who comes to the monastery, he picks up their intentions. And when the deer turns around and goes into the forest, I know that I can't trust these people. But the moment he came to greet you, I said, you guys are alright, you can stay. So you see, animals are very sensitive and they can pick up our deepest inner intentions. Alright, so what else do I have to share? So let's just take a moment and reflect on these 3 principles: deep silence, and deep love, and deep listening. I'm going to give you a minute. Be quiet. We can all take a slow deep breath. And let's say together, how wonderful. So this is, for me, this is like a zipped file which you can keep on unpacking in your life. Loving silence is meditation. Listening to silence is intuition. And loving to listen is connection. To connect with each other. And there is so much more. So as you get in touch with this, you get in touch with attention, intention, and connection. You know, a few years back I talked about Ben Kingsley pretending to be Gandhi and becoming so good at it. I was invited to audition for a movie on the Buddha. So I've been a Buddhist monk and people said it's a good idea. So I'm always open to new experiences, so alright, why not? And as part of the audition, we had to record 2 segments. One was the prince, the Buddha before he became enlightened, he was a prince. We talked to the king, so the prince. And the second one was the Buddha who's just gotten enlightened. And as he comes out of enlightenment, the first words he says. And we had to record these 2 things, send to the director, and the director would decide if he wanted to have you. So, you know, when you're doing a video take, there are several takes. So you do the same thing several times just to get a good shot. And, okay, by the way, I realized then that I would never want to be an actor. You know, over and over, memorizing those lines, and it looks so glamorous. You have to memorize all those lines and say it over and over and over again. Anyway, so I did the prince part. The second part was interesting. I was dressed up like the Buddha, and I was sitting like him, in lotus position. And emerging from enlightenment and saying a few words. And of course, it's done over and over and over again. I had a very deep meditation. I had a very deep experience. And I said, wow, I'm just pretending. I'm just pretending to do this. And I'm having such a profound experience. How is that possible? It's the story that you're telling. If I tell a story, I'm an ordinary guy having an ordinary experience, then you're an ordinary person having an ordinary experience. I'm the Buddha just coming out of enlightenment. You have the experience of a Buddha just coming out, at least a glimpse of it. I felt so peaceful that whole evening after doing that. So there's a tradition in India, the famous tradition of kings who would disguise themselves as ordinary folk to understand what's really going on in their kingdom. So they would pretend to be ordinary people because you can never fully rely on your ministers and the people, what people are telling you. This is done by many great kings that disguise themselves and they just walk around the kingdom. And they get amazing insights and amazing stories and amazing understanding of what's really going on in their kingdom. What the real challenges that the people are facing. There was an example given by one of my teachers that they're the person who's the owner of a drama company. So it's a play acting company. He's the owner of the company. And he owns the whole space. He also owns, all the people are his employees. And they're putting up a play. And in this play, there's a king and there's a slave. And that day, the man who acts as a slave, he's not well, so he can't come. And there's nobody else to fill in his shoes. So the owner of the company has to pretend, he puts on the makeup and pretends to be the slave. And he comes in and he's doing the role. And as he's doing the role, he's behaving like a slave, he's subservient, but inwardly he knows all this belongs to me. All this is actually mine. So he doesn't get fooled, right? So for me, the true understanding that we can tell a lot of stories, but to realize they're just stories. So tell stories, but know that they're just stories. Wake up when you start realizing that everything you're telling about yourself is just a story. And the quality of your story is the quality of your life. 4 kinds of stories. I'm an ordinary human being having an ordinary human experience. 1 story. I'm a physical body having a physical experience. 1 story. 2nd story. I'm a physical being seeking a spiritual experience. 2nd story. 3rd story. I'm a spiritual being, tell me, having a human experience or a physical experience. And the 4th one? I'm a spiritual being having a spiritual experience. And the quality of your story. So the first one I would call materialism. I'm a physical body having a physical experience. Then the only joy is as much pleasure as you can possibly get out of life. That's the happiness you can have. The second one is I'm a spiritual being seeking a spiritual experience. This is where most religions of the world are. Religions talk about you're a sinner or you're not quite there yet and you work the way you're telling you and then you will be saved, and that's the way most religions look at the world. It's the second way of looking at it. Third one is this is what many spiritual movements talk about now, especially New Age movements. You're actually a spiritual being. You're having a human experience for some time. And then there's another one which is, and this is the non-dual traditions. They say everything you're seeing is God. Everyone you're meeting is God. just is the way they are. This is just consciousness experiencing consciousness. So that is a spiritual being having a spiritual experience. And you know what? Even that's a story. Who would you be without all these stories? So when you tell high quality stories, and you're also able to put down the stories, when you start understanding, this is what it means to be a masterful storyteller. So like I said, I only share two things. I invite people to be present and to tell high quality stories. That's my wish for you. And these three beautiful tools we've learned today of deep silence can even just be a moment. In that moment of silence, you will glimpse perfection. In that moment of love and listening, you will have a sense of connection. So listening to yourself, listening to others, loving yourself, like the song we had, loving myself, I can love you. Loving you, you can love you. Beautiful song, right? So that's what I'd like to offer to all of you today. This whole journey, it's a beautiful journey of conscious living, Satya Center of spiritual living, getting in touch with your true nature. And not being bound by, nobody else binds us, it's our own stories that bind us. In India, when they train elephants, the young elephant is tied up to a stout rope, tries to break free, can't break free. As it grows older, it realizes that's hopeless, I can't do it. It stops trying. And you see in India, you see these huge big elephants, tied up by a small little, tiny little, puny little chain. Often the chain is not even tied to anything. But they'll not try to move away, because I'm tied up, I can't do anything. And this great big powerful elephant has limited itself by thinking, I'm bound, I can't do it. So the only real bondage is the bondage of our own thinking, the bondage of our own inner limitations. And by being present and telling high quality stories and associating with other people who are on this path of being present and telling high quality stories, we all together we grow. It's a beautiful adventure. It's an adventure of consciousness. So I want you all to remember that you are kings, you are emissaries of the highest, of the divine, and you're here to fill the world with light. So with that I'd like to end, and I want to offer you a small little prayer as we end, a little blessing. And I want you to say this with me. Let's say together. May I be a channel of blessing for someone today. May I be a channel of blessing for someone today. I am a channel of beautiful blessings in the world. I am the clearest possible channel of the highest possible blessings in the world. May I be a channel of blessings for someone today. And so it is. And so it is. All right. How wonderful.
Thank you for blessing us with your presence today and being a part of the Satya Center. You're invited to join Reverend Ali and Reverend Lyle each Sunday morning at 10 a.m. for your dose of connection, inspiration, and co-creation. The Satya Center is located at 795 24th Street, Ogden, Utah. For directions, a map, and our service times, please see our website, thesatyacenter.org. This program was brought to you by the kind donations from the members of the Satya Center. Thank you.